All right, welcome to the deep dive. So today we're doing something a little different.
Huh?
We're tackling a listener request.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and this one's a doozy, so buckle up.
Right.
Our listener wants to understand what's really going on in the world.
Right. Beyond the headlines.
Exactly, cut through the noise and hear from someone who's, well, seen a thing or two.
And I think they found the right guy for that.
Oh, absolutely. Enter Bob Moriarty.
Bob's not your average analyst.
Definitely not.
He's a resource investor, but also a former fighter pilot.
That's a pretty unique combo.
Yeah, it gives him a pretty interesting take on how, war and economics and global power, all that, how it all fits together.
Yeah, it's a fascinating perspective for sure. So this deep dive, we're digging into a recent interview with Bob.
Okay.
And it kicks off with something totally unexpected.
Huh.
Grapes.
Grapes.
Grapes. Wow. So apparently Bob's blaming an underwater volcano eruption back in 2022 for messing with the weather.
Really?
Yeah, he says it's why his grapes aren't getting enough sun.
Interesting.
And I know what you're thinking. What do grapes have to do with the global economy?
Right.
But trust me, it's a great example of how those seemingly unrelated events, they can have these crazy ripple effects.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though Moriarty might not buy into the, typical climate change stuff, this eruption really did have an impact. It pumped a ton of water vapor into the atmosphere.
Oh, wow. So those grapes
could
be a sign of things to come, huh?
Potentially. But then Bob, he gets serious.
Oh, yeah.
Starts talking about the global financial system.
And he predicted trillions of dollars in write-downs like a year ago.
Yeah. And now he's pointing to Japan.
Oh.
Like a canary in the coal mine.
What's going on in Japan?
He's talking about Japanese banks being forced to sell off government bonds at huge losses.
And why should we care about that?
Okay, remember the 2008 crisis?
Oh, yeah.
In the U.S., the Fed stepped in, right?
They bailed out the banks?
Exactly. Absorbed a lot of those toxic assets. Japan.
Yeah.
They didn't do that.
Oh.
So now, with interest rates going up everywhere, those Japanese bonds, they're plummeting in value.
So those banks are stuck.
Exactly. Left holding the bag.
So is this just a Japan problem?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
What happens if those Japanese banks start collapsing?
Oh, that's not good.
Could have a domino effect.
And the whole world.
Think about it. We're all connected.
Yeah.
A shock in one place,
right.
It ripples outward.
All right, now I'm nervous.
But wait, there's more.
Oh, no.
Bob doesn't stop at financial worries.
Oh.
He's also worried about war.
War.
Yeah, and not just Ukraine.
Okay, hold on. Bob's a veteran, right?
Yeah, he's seen war firsthand.
So when he says he's worried,
We should listen.
he's ringing the alarm bells? What's he saying?
He thinks there's a real war happening.
A real war.
The one everyone's ignoring.
And he doesn't hold back, does he?
Not at all.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear about this real war.
We'll get there.
But first, let's talk about Ukraine.
Right?
Bob's take on Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's pretty controversial. He basically says Ukraine's already lost, and he blames NATO and the U.S.
He's saying they provoked this whole thing?
Yeah, the expansion of NATO, U.S. foreign policy.
And that Ukraine never really had a chance.
Wow.
He's also really critical of Western military leaders.
Oh, yeah.
Questioning how effective those weapons they're sending are.
And then he drops this bombshell.
What's that?
A draft. He says both the U.S. and Germany are considering a draft.
A draft.
Are we seriously talking about a draft in 2024?
I mean, that's a sign things might be more serious than people realize.
What does he think is really going on?
He sees this whole conflict as driven by economics and politics.
Like what?
Specifically, the U.S. selling natural gas to Europe
Oh.
at a big profit.
Wow. Okay, so we've got potential financial meltdowns and escalating wars.
That's a lot.
This is getting heavy, but let's bring it back to something a little closer to home. The U.S. dollar.
What about it?
Is the mighty dollar about to lose its crown?
Moriarty thinks so.
Really?
He predicts the dollar's dominance is fading.
Huh.
He thinks it'll become more like the British pound.
Okay, so still around, but not as powerful.
Exactly.
So if the dollar's not king anymore,
Yeah.
who takes the throne?
That's where things get interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
Moriarty points to China,
Kinda.
and he says they're now in control of the prices of silver and gold.
Wait, what? How is that even possible?
He says China's using the Shanghai Gold Exchange
Uh-huh.
as their main tool to influence global precious metals prices.
Okay.
And this is where he brings in this fascinating historical parallel.
Oh, I love those.
The Opium Wars.
The Opium Wars. Those were about, like, opium and tea, right?
Right, but Moriarty,
Yeah.
he reframes them.
How so?
He says they weren't just about opium.
Oh.
They were about control of silver.
Silver.
Remember, throughout history, China's had this deep connection to silver.
Mm.
They used it as currency for a long time.
So is he saying history is repeating itself?
He makes a compelling case.
Go on.
Think about it. The Chinese real estate market.
Right, it's crashing.
People are losing faith in traditional investments.
And turning to?
Silver, they see it as a safe haven.
Wow. Okay, so China's buying up all the silver, the dollar's on the decline, and the world might be on the brink of war.
Yep, that's the picture Bob's painting.
That's a lot to digest.
It is.
But let's get practical here. What does all this mean for, for our listeners?
What's Bob's advice in all this craziness?
Yeah, what should people actually do, though?
His main message.
Uh-huh.
Stop simply saving money.
Okay.
And start acquiring real assets.
He thinks the system's on shaky ground.
Yeah, and he's saying those traditional investments, like stocks and bonds,
Right.
might not be enough anymore.
What does he recommend instead?
He specifically mentions precious metals,
Gold and silver.
particularly silver.
As a hedge against inflation and, well, everything else.
Yeah, he actually says he doesn't view gold and silver as investments. He
Really?
calls them insurance.
What does he mean by that?
He sees precious metals as a way to preserve your wealth.
Not necessarily grow it.
Right, it's a hedge against inflation, economic uncertainty, the potential for a complete system collapse.
So it's like a safety net.
Exactly, just in case the whole thing goes belly up.
But gold and silver can be expensive.
That's true.
A lot of people don't have a ton of extra cash just lying around.
Right, but even small amounts can make a difference.
And it's not just about precious metals, is it?
No, he's all about diversification.
Like what?
Real estate,
Yeah.
productive land, things with tangible value.
So if the system collapses,
Yeah.
your stocks are just worthless pieces of paper.
Exactly, but an ounce of gold,
Or a farm.
those still have value.
So we've talked about volcanoes,
Collapsing banks,
silver wars.
potential drafts.
But one of the most chilling predictions from Bob
What's that?
is this idea of a cascading series of defaults.
Starting in.
Japan spreading across the globe.
What would that even look like?
Yeah, what would the impact be on our everyday lives? That's something to think about.
It's something to think about for sure.
I mean, I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty terrifying.
Yeah, a cascade of defaults.
Is this like another 2008?
Potentially worse.
Worse.
Remember those Japanese banks selling off their bonds at a loss?
Yeah.
That's just the beginning. Moriarty thinks the whole Japanese financial system is incredibly fragile right now.
Like one wrong move and it all falls apart.
Exactly. And when one major player falls, well,
It's like dominoes.
exactly.
But why Japan? Why is Bob so focused on them?
Well, Japan's been in this weird state of economic stagnation for decades.
Right, I've heard about that.
Massive government debt, shrinking population, those ultra low interest rates they've had forever.
Yeah.
It's created what economists call a zombie banking system.
A zombie banking system? What does that even mean?
Basically, a lot of their banks are technically insolvent.
Insolvent.
They have more liabilities than assets,
Oh,
but they've been kept alive artificially by government policies.
so they're like zombies,
Kind of, yeah, it's like a house of cards.
waiting for a gust of wind.
Exactly. Any little tremor could send the whole thing toppling over.
So what could be the tremor? What could trigger this massive collapse?
Honestly, it could be anything. A sudden spike in interest rates,
Right, yeah.
a major currency crisis,
Yeah.
even another geopolitical event like the war in Ukraine.
Everything's connected.
Exactly. You pull on one thread, who knows what unravels.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Let's say this cascade of defaults does happen.
Right.
What would that actually look like? What would it mean for me, for you, for everyone listening?
Imagine banks failing.
Okay.
Not just small regional banks. Big global institutions.
Oh, wow.
Stock markets would crash, currencies would plummet in value,
People would lose their savings.
their jobs, even their home.
It sounds like a complete disaster.
It wouldn't just be recession, it would be a full-blown financial meltdown.
The kind we haven't seen in generations.
Exactly.
But what can we do about it? It all sounds so big and scary. Can everyday people really make a difference?
That's the question, isn't it? Moriarty's advice is to diversify your assets.
Okay.
Move away from traditional investments like stocks and bonds. Focus on things that have tangible value.
Like what?
Precious metals, real estate, productive land.
Things you can hold in your hand.
Think about it this way. If the whole financial system collapses,
Right.
your stock certificates are just pieces of paper.
But if you own an ounce of gold,
or a piece of farmland,
that still has value.
exactly. It's real, tangible wealth.
Earlier, you mentioned that Moriarty doesn't see gold and silver as investments, but as insurance.
Right. He's saying they're a way to preserve your wealth.
Not necessarily grow it.
Exactly. It's a hedge against inflation, against economic uncertainty, against that potential system collapse.
Because governments can print as much money as they want.
But they can't print gold or silver.
The supply is finite.
Which means the value is more stable.
So it's like a safety net, just in case the world goes upside down.
Exactly.
But gold and silver can be expensive.
True.
And not everyone has a lot of extra cash just lying around.
That's true, but even small amounts can make a difference.
Okay.
And remember, he's not saying put all your eggs in one basket.
It's all about diversification.
Exactly. A little gold, a little silver, maybe some real estate if you can swing it. It's about spreading the risk.
Building resilience.
Right.
So we've talked a lot about the potential downsides.
Yeah.
But Bob also had some surprisingly positive things to say about China.
Oh, yeah.
He seemed pretty bullish on their future.
Especially when it comes to
silver. What's his take there?
He sees China playing a major role in reshaping the global economic order.
Interesting.
They've been quietly accumulating gold and silver reserves for years.
And remember that connection he made to the Opium Wars?
Yeah, he thinks they're positioning themselves to challenge the U.S. dollar.
Using silver as a weapon.
Potentially.
That whole Opium Wars thing really blew my mind.
It's a different way of looking at history.
It really makes you think.
Moriarty argues that China's relationship with silver is deeply ingrained in their culture, their economic thinking.
And with their real estate market collapsing.
It makes sense that people are flocking to silver.
They see it as a safe haven.
Exactly, a store of value in uncertain times.
So if China's buying up all the silver, is there going to be any left for the rest of us?
That's a valid concern. But Moriarty believes the silver market is much bigger than most people realize.
Okay.
And he makes a crucial distinction.
What's that?
He says it's important to own physical silver.
Not just paper contracts.
Right, because in a true crisis, paper assets can become worthless.
If the system collapses...
Who's going to honor those contracts?
But if you have physical silver...
in your possession...
that's something no one can take away.
It's real, tangible wealth.
It's like holding a piece of history in your hand. This all makes sense, but it's still a lot to process.
It is a lot.
It feels like we're living through this massive historical shift. Most people aren't even aware of it.
Like we're all on a train heading towards a cliff.
And only a few people are looking out the window.
That's why conversations like this are so important.
We need to be talking about these things.
Sharing information, helping each other navigate these uncertain waters.
It can feel overwhelming.
But it's also empowering.
Knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely. The more we understand about what's happening,
the better decisions we can make.
Decisions that could protect our families, our communities, our future.
That's what Bob Moriarty is trying to do.
He's not just pointing out the problems.
He's offering solutions.
Even if they're outside the mainstream.
He's challenging us to think for ourselves.
To question the status quo.
To take control of our own destiny.
Exactly.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Collapsing banks, potential wars, China's rise, the future of the U.S. dollar.
It's been a wild ride.
But as we wrap up this deep dive,
I
have one final question for you, the listener.
Okay.
Bob predicts this cascading series of defaults, starting in Japan and spreading globally.
Right.
If that were to happen, what would be the impact on your life? What steps could you take to be prepared?
That's a powerful question.
Take a moment to really think about that.
Because in a world that's changing so fast,
being informed and prepared is the best way to protect yourself.
And those you love.
Absolutely. We hope you found this deep dive insightful and thought-provoking.
We did.
A huge thank you to our listener for suggesting this deep dive into Bob Moriarty's world.
And if you have any thoughts or questions,
we'd love to hear from you.
You can connect with us on social media.
Leave a comment on our website.
Or even send us an email.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay empowered.
Yeah, it really is. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, you know?
Right, and not think about the what-ifs.
Exactly, but as Bob points out, ignoring those risks doesn't make them go away.
It's like, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
And preparing doesn't have to mean, like, you know, building a bunker.
Right, stocking up on canned goods.
Exactly. It can be simple things.
Like what?
Having some extra cash on hand. Diversifying your investments.
Okay.
Maybe even learning a new skill, something that might be valuable if things change.
It's about building resilience.
Right, financially and personally.
Bob's not saying the world's ending.
But he's saying Be prepared.
For anything.
Yeah, think critically.
And he challenges some pretty big assumptions,
Like what?
Like the idea that saving money is always the responsible thing to do.
Oh, interesting.
But with inflation and, the possibility of currency devaluation.
Just holding on to cash could actually mean losing money.
Yeah, it really makes you question everything.
That's why it's so important to hear these different perspectives.
Like Bob's.
Even if you don't agree with everything he says.
Right. It makes you think.
Ask better questions. Make better decisions.
It's like having more tools in your toolkit.
Exactly. The more tools you have,
the better you can handle whatever comes your way.
And sometimes the most valuable tools are the ones that help you think differently.
Yeah, question those assumptions.
See things from a new angle.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
We have.
From collapsing banks and potential wars
to China's rise and the future of the dollar.
It's been a wild ride.
Definitely a lot to digest.
But hopefully empowering, too.
Yeah, remember, knowledge is power.
The more you understand about the world,
the better equipped you are to navigate it.
Create a secure future for yourself and your loved ones.
That's a great point.
So a huge thank you to our listener for suggesting this deep dive.
Yeah, thank you.
We hope you found it as insightful as we did.
Absolutely.
And if you have any thoughts, any questions,
we'd love to hear from you.
You can connect with us on social media, leave a comment on our website.
Send us an email.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay empowered.